and there's appointed times. Save the video to a new file. So we at 33 minutes. We're just gonna continue going. Make sure I didn't run into any more numbers. Where's 2 at? Did I already pass up? That's 1 was Israel. 3 is not. 2 is. Oh, okay. All right. They departed out of Spain, and Paul and his company finding a ship in America, sailing into Britain. They were, but remember where they said Britain was. We'll get there, because they called Britain a certain thing. Let's just look up again. Had escaped by sea to the Isles of far off. As spoken by the prophet and called by the Romans, Britain. So the Isles are far off. Where the apostle was set. The people they thought was an apostle. Ananias. Paul also spoke of. They departed out of Spain, and Paul and his company finding a ship in America, sailing to the Britain. They went therein and passed along the south coast. They reached the port called Raphinius. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, when it was noised abroad, I just heard a dog's bark too, that the apostle had landed on their coast, great multitudes of the inhabitants met him. When they talk about the Lord of hosts, you got to understand, if I host a party at my house and no one shows up, it's still a party at my house. Why? Because I operated in the spirit of partying. So even if I can't see the party, there's still a party happening in my house, right? Now, if I'm setting a party in the spirit and no physical people show up, that's a great party. But physical people gonna show up at a spiritual party too. As you notice, since I've been recording, I just had one pop up I ain't seen in years. Y'all heard that photo ready video went off. I hope I recorded the first portion. But nevertheless, we've had 3 visitors so far. Physical, and a multitude spiritually. Now, apostle had landed on their coast, great multitudes of the inhabitants. Great multitudes of the inhabitants. Why couldn't you just say a great multitude met him? Well, because there's physical bodies and there's spiritual bodies. And there's hosting in the spiritual house of Israel, and there's a hosting in the house in Israel. Right? And they treated Paul courteously, and he entered. There's another animal. Oh, look. There's a frog. Gotta look up what frogs mean too. That's gotta mean something great, because I called it. So look up the spiritual meaning of frogs, and when they appear. I ain't seen a frog in. Oh, I did research a frog. What was that? Me and my daughter did it. Frog just popped up in the house. So did a snail. Right? I'm like, where the hell did a snail come from? Inside the house. So I look, a slug, a snail, whatever. It went inside the shell. Then you had a frog pop up. What does that mean? I looked up the frog, and it had some. It was some good news too. And I noticed that I was going in the right direction just off of that. The Spirit speaks to you, and it has to manifest in the physical. Why? Because that's the power of God. God speaks in diverse manners. His ways are not our ways. Well, his ways, it's not our ways. Anyway, now when it was noticed abroad that the apostle had landed on their coast, great multitudes of the inhabitants met him, and they treated Paul courteously. And he entered in at the east gate of their city, and lodged in the house of a Hebrew, and one of his own nation. That's 2. So 2 is nation, his own nation. That's Acts 28:7. Look, of his own nation. What is his own nation? What is the nation? For there'll be nations against nations, kingdom against kingdom. There's a physical understanding and a spiritual understanding as well. And that if your body is the promised land, then there must be parts of the land that's not the promised land. Or not the promised land, but the Garden of Eden. Where we at? Acts 28:7. So, of his own nation, let's look up a little bit. Howbeit they looked, when he should have swollen or fallen down dead suddenly, but after they had looked a great while and saw no harm come to him, they changed their minds and said he was a god. That's the part that's not 28:7 where it's talk about the nation, but that's where Paul, on his first journey, him and what's his name? Not at the first journey, but him and Barnabas, I think, were traveling, and they mistook him for a god. They thought he was a god. Why? Because he put his hand by the little thing, and a snake bit him, right? And they were steady looking for him to die, but he never did die. So he was like, man, he must be a god. But see, even right now, me recording this and speaking to you about this, there's supposed to be a spiritual death that taketh place. And you just seen where God told Ananias he's a servant who's supposed to be taking this message to the Gentiles, right? So don't touch him, right? Because Ananias had the power to bind all who call on his name. What was his name? Or the number of his name. Why would God give the number of the name of the Antichrist? Right? Because it's everything. Mathematics and numbers is the language of the universe to the man. Right? That's how they speak to the universe, is numbers and understanding numbers. Nikola Tesla said, if you understand the power of 369, then you understand the power of the universe. Well, that's to the numbers that you can calculate. But then there's an incalculable number that is God, right? You can't fathom it. You can't put a number on it. Why? Because he'll just put another number on top of it. It one up you every time. You can't fathom, right? That's what complex calculus speaks of when they speak of imaginary numbers or You have they just imagine it just to make the what do they call it? Make the problem. I don't want to say problem. It's another word for it, but to make the problem that they're solving make it make sense, right? Man, I can't remember. But 7, we speak about the nation, those of his own nation, in the same quarters, howbeit they looked when they should have swollen, fallen down, dead suddenly, but after they looked a great while and saw no harm had come to him, they changed their mind and said he was a god. In the same quarters were possessions of the chief man of the island, whose name was Publius. 3:22. Who received us and lodged us 3 days courteously. So the people who are of his nation, his same nation that they were speaking of in Acts, is in the same quarters, right? That's in the same nation. Were possessions of the chief man of the island, whose name was 3:22. It's 45 minutes and 34 seconds when I just said that. So maybe that has something to do with it too. Who received us and lodged us 3 days. So that's 3:22 and 3. You can also say 32:23. Because he lodged us 3 days courteously. All right. So the nation, we understand, was, just went through that. Verse 9, 32, 23, 5. And on the morrow, so he came on the morrow, he lodged in the house of a Hebrew and one of his own nation. So one of my own nation I just lodged, or he lodged with, all right? And it was possessions of the chief man, right? The big shot in the land of the Hebrews. What? And he housed them courteously for 3 days, right? So Paul came on the morrow and said, cool, I'll sleep till in the morning. And on the morrow, he came and stood up on Mount Lud. So I just moved to the morrow that quick. There's the 3-day rest period right there, and that's how perceive. When you've been, there's a understanding of everlasting life too, right? That an heir is, man, bro. It's just gonna take time, but anyway, for me to share that with you. And on the morrow, he came and stood up on Mount Lud. Mount Lud. Where's Mount Lud? That's 3. We're gonna stop at verse 9, and we're gonna break that down and get some more information and come back to you guys. So Mount Lud is Ludgate Hill in Broadway, where St. Paul's Cathedral is built in London. So Lud and Broadway, Ludgate Hill and Broadway, is a cross street in London. Right? We're going to continue with the book of Acts, the lost chapter of Acts. After we do a word study and raising the children right. Because there are children to be born from this.